Hi, my name is Jim, and today I'm going to show you how to modify your Razor MX650. We're going to take it from 650 watt engine to a 800 watt. Few quick steps. It should increase the power of this by about 23%, which will take a Razor scooter from about 16-17 miles an hour to 21 miles an hour. So I'll go step by step, show you the parts, and do the installation piece by piece. Hopefully this will make it a lot easier for you to upgrade your Razor scooter. Thanks. Bye. So here's the parts list I ordered from electricscooterparts.com. All of these parts fit with the bike except for one exception, the motor. We're going to have to drill a hole in the motor mount to be able to mount it appropriately, and I'll show you how to do that. I have no background in electrical work or contracting. I'm just a regular guy upgrading a Razor scooter, and it's the MX650 dirt bike. So here's a starting project. I took the stickers off. My boys are getting older and they prefer the bike without the stickers. In addition, I'm going to cut the plastic here so I have easier access to the engine area. It's very challenging to get in there, and you have to take off the entire motor, the entire seat, plastic, fake gas tank in order to get to it. So by trimming this section, just trimming this off, you'll then have access to it for future battery changes and any electric issues. I've done this with my other son's bike and it's worked, and we're taking it from a 650 watt engine to a 800, and we're keeping the 36 volt. This way it's still stock on the inside, no modifications are necessary. So step one will be to remove the plastic, the seat, the gas tank, and we will get to show you once that's removed what it looks like, and we'll also take off the engine bay, the fake engine plastic box here. Once we do that, we will then start looking at the wiring. Okay, so now all the plastic has been removed from the bike, besides the engine bay, which I'll remove next. And it's pretty much a process of elimination. Just go screw by screw, pull it off, turn it upside down, and just take them off. I'd recommend bagging the parts. So I just kind of like bag it by seat and rear side and front end. This way when you're putting it back together, you remember it's not that difficult in the screwing it back in, but you could lose a screw along the way. So that's what it looks like, and now I'll take apart the engine compartment. Okay, I've pulled the engine bay off, and what you'll find is that here's the on-off switch. That will have to be replaced. The battery charger, so this charges the battery, this wire will remain. However, we'll have to use an adapter to reverse the polarity to get to the new charger. And we have a wire that's in the kit that would take care of that, so we just need to take this off, and then we'll continue with the video. But this is what it looks like. We'll have to disconnect the batteries, which is just taking out those screws there, screw here, pull the batteries out. Really the system is very simple. It's just a controller with a lot of snaps, connectors to a motor. Not that challenging in the sense of what you think it could look like, but I will get back to it. And like I said, I have no experience at all with these motorcycles or putting anything like this together. And just went through it step by step through YouTube videos and thought I'd create something that would be easy to understand for the average person. So I just wanted to take a second to show you when you pull the rubber off, here is the charger that I disconnected from the original controller. When you pull this rubber boot off, you just have pieces that slide into the on-off switch. They just come right out, and you'll disconnect it. And then you will take this whole section off because you will not need it in the new setup, because we have to put a new throttle on, new battery connector. So it's relatively simple, but you won't need this piece. Razor does something different with the way they charge and set their ignition switch off that standard bikes don't do it. It's custom to Razor, and I'll show you the parts that need to go in and make this thing work again. Okay, I removed the battery brackets to hold the batteries in place. Now it gives me access to the controller and all the parts. So I'm just going to disconnect the brakes, the engine, that's pretty much it, and the battery. And then I'll be able to pull the batteries out, and I'm going to replace the batteries with 12 volt 15 amp hour. It has it on here now, but since I have this open, I'm going to put new batteries in because the new motor will draw more power. I'm looking to get about 30 to 35 minutes of ride time. I've done this with another bike. It's much smoother, it's quicker pickup, and it definitely can carry a heavier person faster. So as my boys get bigger, they want more speed, but they also want the bike to stay consistent. So I'm going to disconnect all these parts now, and then we'll remove the motor. Okay, once the batteries have been removed and the controller, you should be left with 2 brake cables. So this is when they squeeze the brakes, the engine actually stops working. There's 2 of them. There's an adapter because the controller that we have only has an input for 1, but they do have an adapter that takes a 2 into a 1 and it works, and I'll show you that. And here's the throttle. The throttle will still be here when you remove the controller, but this, we have to put a new throttle assembly on because it's not really a universal throttle. It's for just Razor and won't work with the controller. So I'm going to modify the throttle, put a new throttle on with meter. And here is the motor, and I'm going to take that out next, which is just removing it from some mounting screws. So that's what it should look like when you've removed the batteries, and those are the parts. We will then take the throttle off, we'll leave this, and we'll put a new throttle on, and we'll take the motor off. When taking the motor out, you will have to remove the chain guard. It's no big deal. It's 1 screw there, and then 1 screw there, and it'll give you access to be able to pull the motor out. And there's only 3 motor mounts, 2 on one side, and 1 right here. Very simple procedure to take out. Okay, here's the motor out. I didn't even have to take the back tire off. I just pulled it through, pulled it out, and it came off the chain. And now we will install the new motor. There is an issue with installing the new motor. It has to do with the way the motor is made, so I will show you what the issue is and how to get around it. So here's a side-by-side comparison of the old motor on the right and the new motor on the left. The new motor on the left is 800 watts, gives you more power. The issue is that the Razor motor mount, the way it holds the motor together, not the mounts, but actually the screws to hold the engine together, is recessed. And on new motors, or the motor replacement motors, they are not. So it does not fit in the motor area there. So you actually have to drill a hole into the frame, and I'll show you what to do, but drill a hole into the frame so this screw head fits into the frame, recesses into the frame, and your motor mount fits. Your new motor fits. So a little bit of a pain. Was something that I wasn't expecting to do, but then when I went on electricscooterparts.com, they said that when they do their conversion, you have to drill a hole in the front frame for the motor, and I'm assuming it's the same procedure. So just something you have to do, just simple drill bits, drilling right into the frame and build a hole large enough that can drill through, a bit that can drill through steel and get through and make a hole this size. Not challenging, but a pain in the neck. I thought it might just slip right in, but it doesn't. So I'll show you the completed hole when we do that. Okay, so the hole has to be about 1 3/4 inches off the kickstand. So I measure from the edge of the kickstand down, it's about 1 3/4 inches, and it has to be way at the top of the frame there by the kickstand. So I will drill the hole, we'll take a look at it. Sometimes it takes some sizing, but these frames are very thick, there should be no issue, but it's around that area. And like I said, I'm not a mechanic, I'm not an expert, I just need to get this thing to fit. Okay, so now I made the hole in the frame, just progressively getting to larger and larger drill bits. And now there's a hole in the frame that we will be able to put the motor mount screw through, and it'll just recess in there. So I need a little bit more wiggle room, so I just made the hole bigger. It's trial and error right now. This is a very thick steel frame, shouldn't be any issue, but I would just say as you put the motor in, keep trying until you get it in the right spot. Okay guys, the motor assembly is in. It just took some adjusting of that hole to get it in, and then the parts fit right in. And the hole doesn't really matter, the size or how perfect it is, because it really just sits the screw head in there for the motor, but the mount is all intact and holds it in place. And now we've got the wire from the motor coming out here, and we still have we'll have to redo our throttle, but the motor part, this is the hardest part to do. that's complete. Okay, now that I've got the assembly in, the motor, I'm going to clip the throttle cable here. And I like to keep the straps on there, the zip ties. So I'm going to clip this cable and just pull the throttle wire in so we can just, oh, there's my son, so we can put in the new throttle assembly. So here's the clip throttle assembly, and I pulled it all the way through. And now I'm going to just take the throttle assembly off. Very simply pulls off, unscrew it, pulls off, and then we'll put the new throttle assembly back on. Okay, I've taken off the throttle assembly. Now I'm going to put on a new throttle on the right side and just a handlebar cover on this side, a little grip on this side. And the throttle assembly is right there. And there's the part number for the throttle assembly. And that's what it looks like. But you have to buy a universal throttle assembly. I go without an indicator because I put my own indicator on. It's just easier to connect to the new controller. Okay, throttle assembly's on. I've put the wire through, actually pulled it back through the zip ties. And now I have 3 wires that I just have to match up, and I'll show you how to do that on the connector. So it connects into the controller. So before we get to the controller, I'm going to put the battery gauge on. So it'll be a 36 volt meter. There is the part number that I will hook up on the handlebars, and it'll keep track of the battery life better than the battery charge, better than the original handle. So now I've mounted the meter on the handlebars, pulled the wire through, put it back through the zip ties, and now I've got a charger, meter, and the throttle cable all pulled through the bike. So far all good. Still got my brake cables here. Still got the brake cables, so it stops the motor. And now we're going to get to put the batteries on and the controller, and then we should be able to begin to hook up and see if this will run. Okay, so I've secured the batteries. They're in, and the controller brace will not fit a current one, so you'll have to zip tie it. But right now it's standard 3 battery setup, 36 volt, 3 12 volt 15 amp hour batteries for a little bit longer life because you have the 800 watt motor on it. Now I buy this particular harness because it's got the fuse attached to it, but I do have to change the end to connect into the controller, and the power connector utilizes a CNX50 connector to the battery, from the battery to the controller, and we'll hook that up next. So it requires a 40 amp fuse, so we put a 40 amp fuse into the holder there, and that's the piece that has to connect to the controller, because they want the fuse between the controller and the battery. So I pulled the wire out of the old connector because the connector is not compatible with the controller, and I'm just going to splice the wire into a new connector that will work with the battery, which is the CNX50 connector. Okay, so now I have wired the batteries. So it's very simple: red to black, one battery, top battery to one battery, black to red, that's top to bottom, red to black, black to red, and then red to black here. This is what's going to plug into the battery, and this is going to on-off switch. It'll go to it, and here's where the amp goes through. So the amp is here, the fuse goes into this, and we'll connect that all up to the controller. So now we've got the engine installed really easily. We've got the battery installed, and then you've got the 36 volt 800 watt controller, and everything will connect to it. And I'll show you how that's done, but it's very simple, and it won't fit with the screws on top here. So what you'll have to do is zip tie it. So we'll do that next. We'll zip tie it. We've got all our wires coming through now. We've got our gauge, we've got our brake, we've got our throttle. We just have to put the connectors on the throttles and it'll get it going. So now I've zip tied the charger, the controller in place, and now it's about connecting everything. There's a few little cues that you have to look out for. On the controller sheet, it will tell you the polarity, so positive, negative, all the way through. So you just follow the matching with the connectors. So it'll tell you it needs a MX650 connector or 52, and you can buy those separately. And you would just match the positives to the positives and the negatives to the negatives, and it should all line up. We'll do that now. So you see I plugged in the component I was just discussing, the on-off switch, plugged it right in to the controller. Now every piece has been plugged in to the controller. Here are my two brakes with the adapter. Okay. Here is the indicator cable. Here is the battery to the controller to power it. Here is the motor. Here is the on-off switch, and here's the charger. So now what should happen is when I turn on, see? So when I turn this on, I should get indicator that this is working, and then if I move the throttle, it should work. So I'm going to test it out. Okay, so now I've connected everything to the bike. All the connections are in. The chargers, the motor, all connected. Quick test. Turn it on. I'm getting a reading of power. I suggest you lift the rear of the bike and turn the throttle, which I did. Make sure the wheel runs, and it does. Now I'm just going to put the bike back together. And we have completed the modification. We have an 800 watt motor. We've got an 800 watt controller, 36 volt. 3 standard batteries in their compartments. So we've got 3 12 volt 15 amp hours. We've got a battery meter, and we've converted the throttle so it connects to the new controller. This job is done. Now we'll put it together and test it. Okay, now I have installed the engine compartment. It's all tight. Now it's just put on the seat and take it for a test drive. All the screws are in, ready to go. Okay, so here's the finished product. And like I said, we cut the plastic so you can get access, I don't know if you can see it, but you can get access to the screws. So when you want to make new modifications to the Razor, you can actually get your hands in there without having to take apart the seat component. So I would recommend cutting the plastic flare in order to get in there and be able to work on it. Works. Took it for a test ride. Probably goes about 21, 22 miles per hour. Fully functional. Not much modifications, just some plug and play. Hope you enjoyed the video and I hope it's helpful for you. Good riding.